a Saturday night.
What does it feel again?
Why, you see from man me there, not a far north said. Imagine if he didn't go here. The man left me, me not know what to do. So much of the act you want.
You want a dozen, you know?
You want a dozen?
I have $20. So you know what to do? You cook the aki, a piece of yam, and a me and you overeat it.
Can me aki one instead, market, not a quantity, what say? Can me aki one instead, market, not a...
I think this is the best local government month event we have had. This was wonderful. This was great.
Are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Saviour's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt his worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night divine.
Sir Alexander Bustamante was the first Prime Minister of independent Jamaica. The life and myth of the man is explored in a new book by veteran journalist Ken Jones. He speaks about his publication next on this week's edition of Issues and Answers.
Ken, it's so good to have you on Issues and Answers.
Yes, I think I finally made it. The upper echelons of broadcasting.
Oh, boy. You're so kind. Another book on Bustamante.
Yes.
You have taken a great deal of interest in Bustamante. You knew him personally. You spent a number of years just looking over the records, doing enormous research on Bustamante. What are some of the primary things you come away with after having spent this much time on Sir Alexander Bustamante?
Well, I had to conclude from personal observation and later research and study that this man was a most unusual personality, a human being that is you can hardly replicate. And when I considered all his achievements and his courage, his humor, his humanity and his humility, that he was somebody that ought to be remembered, that we ought to take lessons from all that he had done and make better use of the legacy he left behind. I think it is now something like 30 years since the man passed. And there is a whole generation here that couldn't write you 200 words about him, because in Jamaica here, we don't teach too much about our national heroes. We tell them where they were born, when they were born, and things like that. But to really understand their philosophy and their contribution to the development of the country, that is not done enough. And I think it contributes to the weakness of our people. Because I do believe that our people are not as strong as they should be, not as independent as the leaders of the past thought that they were going to make of our people.
So you wrote this book to fill this knowledge gap.
Yes, that was not the first thought. The first thought was the admiration of the man and his work. And then as I went on, I realized that, you know, if people knew more about him, and there was great misconception about the kind of man he is. A lot of people thought he was not very well educated and all that. Well, maybe he wasn't greatly educated, but he was very wise. And there is a great gap between wisdom and education. You can be educated and not be wise. Well, he was a wise man, an unusual man. And it was my hope that from what he had done, our people could draw inspiration and improve themselves and the country.
What are some of the main things we can draw in contemporary Jamaica from the life of Sir Alexander Bustamante?
Well, we know him mostly as a political leader, because that is how he came out in his late life after he had passed 50, going into 60.
54 years.
And the sacrifices he made have been underestimated. When you consider the times that he came out, in the 30s there.
Yes.
He needn't have done what he did. He had he had enough money to be comfortable. He had his color. He had his family connections, and his experience and skills. He didn't have to do what he had done, but he turned his back on his personal life and devoted his whole attention to the development of poor people and the country at large. And you know, he started by writing all these letters, and then he came out in person, leaving behind everything to do with his own personal well-being.
So this example of self-sacrifice.
That kind
certainly
of
a relevant message in Jamaica in 2009.
When you think of it, all these people he were marching up and down with, every day he would go out there, up and down the country. He wasn't doing it because he was expecting a salary. There was no salary attached.
Was he power-crazed, Ken Jones? Was it power that he was looking?
Well, he realized that he had power after the people had given it to him.
But that wasn't his motivation.
But I don't think that's where he started.
Yes.
Because he started with the letter writing, pointing out all these
Social
difficulties
ills.
and things that needed to be corrected. And like I say, he made all these sacrifices without any thought of compensation or reward. And then he was campaigning up and down the country, speaking without microphones, speaking in dusty places anywhere. He wasn't campaigning for a seat in Parliament. He had no thought of that because the people at that time had no vote. So it wasn't like he was running for election. That
power.
developed afterwards.
You
know, so those sacrifices.
That's an important lesson. Anything else? So the self-sacrifice.
Today we see some of what is going on. No, there is no sacrifice there. Every man for himself. And it's not a good thing for the country. And we need to stop and take stock of that. So,
is courage is something else that you point to in the book. I want to take the break, but that's certainly an important characteristic. We're looking at the life of national hero Sir Alexander Bustamante. This book, Notes, Quotes, Anecdotes, Bustamante by Ken Jones. Ken Jones is our guest on Issues and Answers today. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
When I look in the mirror, sadness looks back at me. Will my life go carelessly?
But even with the sadness and fear, the word of peace I will share.
I choose peace. I choose to live violence free.
Welcome back. The book Bustamante, Notes, Quotes and Anecdotes by Ken Jones is what we are discussing. We're looking at the life of national hero Sir Alexander Bustamante with Ken Jones, the author of the latest book on Bustamante. courage, such an important